My friend Sean Spicer, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so good. I don't want you to tell the end of the story yet. I want you to start.
No.
Yeah, I want you to start at the beginning. What happened when you left the White House and Biden took over as president?
I'll take you back one step further.
Okay.
So I stepped down as White House press secretary, and the president has always been kind and offered to appoint me to a couple boards. He appointed me to two of them. One of them was the White House Commission on Fellows. I was a commissioner there. And then he also was kind enough to make me one of his appointees to the board of visitors of the U.S. Naval Academy. So I was sworn into office. Joe Biden comes into office. And so on January 20th, myself and all of the White House commissioners at that fellowship committee resigned because it's a White House commission and the new president has a right to have people for White House commissions.
Sure.
Fair enough. Well, September 1st, I get an email of 2021 and it says, "Dear Mr. Spicer, thank you for your service to the U.S. Naval Academy Board of Visitors. By 6 o'clock tonight, please submit your resignation or you will be fired." And I thought, whoa, what? Now, just for context, remember, Glenn, September 1st, my term ended November 1st. 60 days later, I was like, you couldn't wait 60 days just to have it for free? So I was like, I'd been sworn into office. My term was, ended that time, and I obviously wasn't going to get reappointed. Biden had his right to appoint his people. Great. So it turns out that he fired everybody. Myself from the Naval Academy Board, Russ Vought from the Naval Academy Board, and then a guy named H.R. McMaster from the West Point Board, who, by the way, H.R. McMaster, you remember, was the National Security Advisor to Trump, 3-star Army general, who was a graduate of West Point, a distinguished professor at West Point, and the Friday after that Tuesday email was going to be honored at West Point as a distinguished alumni in their awards ceremony. So anyway, he fires us September 1st. I don't resign. I said, I'm not resigning. You can fire me if you want. And then Stephen Miller in America First came to me and said, "We have an idea." I said, "Okay, what's the idea?" He goes, "We want to sue Biden." Now, Glenn, I'm not a lawyer. Right. And I said, guys, I watch a lot of Law and Order, but how in God's earth, if we sue the guy in September, I mean, my term ends November 1st. We're never going to get back on the board. And they said, no. Let's go to court and make Joe Biden argue that he has the absolute authority to fire anybody. And because we're not going to win the case. They'll rule against us. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant. So the only people, but here's the kicker, the only people who were willing to put their name on that lawsuit are myself and Russ Vought. Of all of the other people that were so honored that President Trump had appointed them, and they went to everyone and said, "Hey, will you sign on to this?" And they said, "Thanks, we're busy." Russ Vought. So the case became Spicer et al. V. Biden. It goes up to the court. The court says the president has the absolute authority to that. We appeal the decision. It goes to the appeals level, and the court again reaffirms the decision that Joe Biden and the president of the United States have the absolute authority to fire anyone. And the media started calling Glenn, and they go, "You lost the case." And I said at the time, did I? so Donald Trump gets elected, and this is where it gets really fun. You'll love this because
you know the rest of the story. Here it comes.
Yes, thank you, Paul Harvey. So the New York, I write this story in this op-ed for the New York Post saying, hey, guess what? Spicer v. Biden has given President Trump the authority to fire anyone he wants. I hope that President Trump executes it. And the White House is tweeting it, sending me messages back. Guess who we just fired? Guess who we just fired? And I'm living in this glory. Well, I write this piece for the New York Post explaining, hey, here's what we did. Here's the legal basis. All of these people who are about to get fired by Trump should thank President Biden for this. Now, here's where it gets fun. The New York Post in the editing process says to me, okay, well, was it just the service academies? And I said, no, they had the right to fire anyone. And they said, well, give us some examples. And so I've got the list of boards and commissions that the president can appoint to. There's like a couple hundred too. And I start reading one of the editors. I said, well, they could fire, there's the Battlefield Commission, there's the Truman Scholarship, there's the Kennedy Center. She goes, oh, put that in the op-ed. Put that. People will identify with that. And then we added a couple other examples to the op-ed. So the op-ed gets published in the New York Post, and it gets a lot of coverage, whatever. And President Trump continues to fire people. And when they fire the board of the Kennedy Center, The Washington Post calls, the spokesman for the Kennedy Center, and he says, "Are you going to be opposing President Trump firing you?" And on the record, the spokesman for the Kennedy Center says, "We can't. Spicer v. Biden sets the precedent for this, gives the president the authority to do this." Now here's the kicker. The Washington Post calls me and says, "What do you think about what the Kennedy Center is saying?" Now, I have a hard enough time keeping up with President Trump. I don't focus on what the Kennedy Center is saying. I'm sorry, that's really not my thing. So I said, "I don't know." And they go, "Are you serious? You don't know that they just cited your case as the reason that they can't oppose or object to what President Trump just did?" And I said, "Oh, my God, that's amazing. I'm glad to have played a small part in it." A day later, the reporter calls me back and says, "I went and read all of the court documents, and you're right." And I said, "Of course what do you mean? I wasn't lying to you." And he said, "I've got to write this big story." And I said to my team at the time, my family, I was like, "Oh, my God, this is not going to go well. The Washington Post wants to write a story about Spicer v. Biden and why it's given the president the authority to." And then I get a text and it says, "Hey, we're putting the story up." And I go, "Oh, like these things don't end well for people like me and people like you." Yeah. It's like you don't get it's like getting a call from the IRS. It doesn't go well when they go, "Hey, I'm from the Washington Post and I'm writing a story about Glenn Beck." Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I click on the story and I'm reading and I'm like, okay. Like, when's the bad part coming? And the only part is I normally, there's that phrase, Glenn, where people say that they hate watch MSNBC or something.
Yeah.
And I read the comments. I had to do it. I normally will not read the comments. I don't read the Twitter replies, whatever. But I read the comments, and these snowflakes, they're so offended. They're like, Sean Spicer's an evil person for suing the president. I'm like, wait a second. You have to understand the context. Never in the history of the United States had any president ever removed somebody from a service academy board prior to their term being done for anything less than malfeasance. And even that, we can't find an example. Never. Joe Biden was so petty. And the point is, they're mad at me. The comments, there's like thousands of comments when you click on the Washington Post story, and I posted it on all my social media stories if someone wants to go read it. And I was like, wait a second, you're mad at me. They're like, "I can't believe you did this." And I'm like, wait, I did nothing. I literally had 60 days to go. I'm sure I would have gotten some little, medallion from the Naval Academy saying, "Thanks for your service, be on your way." And yet, here they are. Like all these snowflakes putting comments in the Washington Post that like I'm the bad guy. Because why? Because I stood up and said, "Hey, you want to argue that you have to do this, then give a future Republican president." Now, at the time, myself and Russ Vought had no idea that President Trump hadn't even declared for re-election yet. But we thought to ourselves, hey, you know what? We'll stand up. Now, like I said, I watch a lot of Law and Order, but that's my legal prowess here. Right. So the idea that this case now, which we thought at the time, hey, let's try it, has now become the basis for which President Trump can run around and say, "You're fired," legit, is amazing. And I'm like, the Post wrote in the story that I was giddy. I think that's an understatement. I am so ecstatic that not just that President Trump can execute on this strategy and that it was Joe Biden that set the president and gave us this gift is such sweet, poetic justice.
Whenever anybody tries to force their way, it never ends well. Never ends well.
But think about this. They tried to deplatform Trump. They censored him. They took him off the ballot. They sued him civilly and criminally. And it's backfire. Learn your lesson, folks. Like, to me, I get such a kick out of this because these dum-dums keep thinking if we just go after him one more time, it'll work. And it doesn't.
So what is the strategy now? Do you think they have? I mean, because none of this is working.
No, I hope that it's continue. I mean, I just love the fact that they keep trying. They double down on stupid. And they're like, what if we just try it one more time? And I'm like, God bless you. But the idea is just at some point, you take take the loss and just say, let's regroup, let's retreat. He's not running again. Maybe we stop making it about him and we think about what we're for. I don't tend to give a ton of advice to the Democratic Party, but at some point recognize it. For 10 years, you've tried to say that Donald Trump's the problem and we're going to come up against him, and it hasn't worked. So maybe, just maybe, you try to rethink this whole strategy.
So
look, I don't really care if that's their problem, not mine.
I performed at the Kennedy Center 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it was like it almost took an act of Congress to make that happen. I mean, you can rent out the Kennedy Center and do whatever you want on there. Well, they had a problem with me, and they told me at the time I was the first show ever done at the Kennedy Center that displayed the American flag on stage. I found that incredible. But I don't care what happens at the Kennedy Center. It doesn't matter to me. But the left is freaking out. They're just freaking out.
Here's the thing. There's a bigger arc that I think is taking place. In the first term, we were somewhat apologetic. We were like, remember, just think about this. And remember, the Kennedy Center is just one thing. So President Trump can keep firing everybody. But when in 2017 we came into office, the Kennedy Center Honors, right, which is supposed to be this annual thing where all these leftists get awards and they celebrate each other. They said, we won't come if Trump shows up. And so Trump was actually magnanimous and said, you know what, you guys go on, have your event, I won't go, okay? And I think that there was a lot of feeling around it, trying to understand the trappings. And like I said, it was new. What do we do? How do we approach this? This term, he says, screw it. You're all fired. I'm taking over the board. I'm in charge. I'm putting my people. And I love it. This idea that we have learned, and this is what I mean about the arc. It's that don't be afraid. Don't be apologetic. Fight. Go out there. Why are we ceding ground at the Kennedy Center? Why is it that Glenn Beck is the only person that puts an American flag on it? Why aren't we saying, you know what? Let's bring in more people who do that. Let's be proud. Let's be patriotic. Let's use this institution to celebrate America. But I don't understand. Like the mentality is so different now. It's let's fight.
Yeah.
Let's do this. I love it.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. I thank you for what you did. And, the only thing that would make it better is if you or I were on the board of the Kennedy Center and we could announce that Lee Greenwood's residency was now taking place at the Kennedy Center.
Listen, I think just so you know, now that you've that's definitely not going to be the last time that we hear that. You can take credit for it, but I have a feeling Lee may be leading the residency of several other country artists that come into
It would be
play
fantastic. There. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sean Spicer.